that sounds good, flying buses, free food, freezing rents. It's all untrue. It is all untrue. There is no Santa Claus. He has no plan. And he has no ability or experience to accomplish anything in this city.
Despite his own poll numbers, Curtis Sliwa continues to campaign hard.
If there was this tsunami of people yelling at me, drop out, it just ain't happening. It ain't happening.
In his latest ad, Mamdani seems to suggest his greatest threat is complacency.
People say we got this. It's over. Cuomo is cooked. Do not believe it.
Marist pollster Lee Miringoff.
Right now, he's campaigning in the groups that he's weaker with, and Cuomo's going much more negative. And I think that tells you who thinks they're doing well and who thinks they're doing not.
And the story remains the same, with Cuomo and Sliwa chasing the same moderate and conservative voters in an overwhelmingly Democratic city. In Midtown, NJ Burkett, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Joining me now is ABC News Deputy Political Director Ben Siegel to talk a little bit more about these key races as we approach Election Day. Ben, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about this mayoral race. And there was a new poll that was just issued, and we'll put it up on the screen, and it kind of shows the same theme. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts as we drill down a little bit more into this lead that Mamdani maintains in these polls. First up, what do you make of this poll compared to a poll that we saw yesterday, which showed a slightly smaller lead for Mamdani, but still ahead by double digits?
Yeah, I think all these polls are generally in the same ballpark, which is that this is still Mamdani's race to lose. You might see Andrew Cuomo consolidating more support as voters make up their minds. Depending on the polls, you might have more of those who are surveyed saying that they're undecided. But that's just typical variance. I think that the big picture storyline here is that Mamdani still has a comfortable lead over Cuomo, and based on what he was able to do in the primary, to change the electorate, to really form this new coalition. I think he's still in pole position here. The question, I think, on a lot of observers' minds is if Mamdani can actually get above 50% and bring more of a mandate with him to Gracie Mansion. But of course, we could always get a surprise with Cuomo. But at this point, all the polls are telling a very similar story.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about a potential surprise in just a moment. Let's put that Quinnipiac poll up again, if we would, guys, because I want to show Ben what we were talking about with this poll that came out yesterday. And it showed the undecided number at around 6. And you start to do the math, and I'm not a great math whiz. My kids would tell you that as I try to help them with their elementary school homework. However, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking Cuomo's camp has to believe that he's somewhat in striking distance if you believe this poll, because we also learned that 1 in 5 Sliwa supporters said that they may be open to changing their minds about whether or not they would actually vote for Sliwa even though they support him. What if you're on the Cuomo team, when you see that number undecided, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that's a significant number, and I'm also not very good at math, so I won't pretend to know how you get past Mamdani's lead here. But what I will say is that, look at where these candidates are going. We've seen Cuomo spending time in Brooklyn and Staten Island, and places where there are traditional Republican New York City voters. And I think you're right. I think that is the play here, to try to peel off as many Sliwa voters as possible to try to close the gap with Zohran Mamdani. And I think where he spends the next couple days will tell you all you need to know about who he's trying to reach out to. And yeah, if you put those numbers together, you do get within striking distance here. But I will say, what Mamdani has said about his ground operation, it's really a formidable operation they've put together. He says 90,000 volunteers have been working on his behalf throughout the city. There are some other groups, some outside groups supporting Cuomo that are knocking on doors. But now it's all about who can turn out and convincing people to turn out as well.
Cuomo spent some part of this week in Staten Island. That's a huge Republican stronghold traditionally. Sliwa pushing back, saying he's the true representative of Staten Island. We'll see how that shakes out with the Staten Island vote and where they break. But you also mentioned the break in who is going to vote for whom in this election. And I believe some of the numbers reveal, and maybe not a big surprise, but a lot of younger people, 45 and under, seem to be gravitating towards the Mamdani camp. And then you have older people in these numbers gravitating towards Cuomo. And you see Mike Bloomberg tossing another $1.5 million into a super PAC supporting Cuomo. What about that influence? Does that play at all for Cuomo in these closing hours?
Yeah, I think the name Michael Bloomberg still means something in New York to many New Yorkers who remember his mayoralty and his business success. Obviously, this is an investment that wouldn't make much sense if Bloomberg thought that this race was over. So you do have to wonder, is there something that his team seems to think that is out there about the electorate or about the data they're seeing to suggest that this could move the needle a little bit in Andrew Cuomo's favor? So, you know, again, that's one of the reasons why you can't completely count Cuomo out. A lot of voters, and I've seen this covering presidential races and Senate races too across the country, do not underestimate how many people are just not tuned into politics until the last possible minute. So you still have people now in New York City who are making up their minds. And yes, in terms of early vote, I think what's interesting is that the younger voters are supporting Mamdani. Typically, older people tend to vote early, and they could be breaking perhaps for Cuomo, though it's really too early to tell. But again, the election day electorate will also be very different, and that's another huge part of this, as important as the early vote will be.
Already record turnout for early voting. We'll see what happens next Tuesday. But Ben, one more on the mayor race. We saw what happened in the primary, and this could go the opposite way for Cuomo. He's hoping it does, because ahead of the primary over the summer, it seemed like Cuomo was a lock if you believe the polls. So if you're a voter out there and you hear us talk about these polls, why should we believe them if we see what happened in the primary?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the polls are only as good as your survey and who you were talking to and your best guesses, your educated guesses about what the electorate will look like. So obviously Mamdani was very successful in bringing out many first-time voters, people who were not on the radar of pollsters. And though the race did tighten as it got closer to Election Day, so it wasn't a complete surprise, even if it was a political surprise. But you have to imagine, too, that the pollsters are also taking into account who they think will come out to vote based on the primary. That's the most recent example we have, and are adjusting their surveys accordingly. So, again, it's not just, you know, for anybody watching at home, you should not put all of your eggs in one basket, whether it's the Marist poll or the Quinnipiac poll. But look at what every poll is saying, and are they all telling a story? And right now, from what we see, and again, they can be wrong, and there is a lot of voting left to take place, but all the polls seem to be painting the picture of a Mamdani lead right now heading into Election Day. But again, there's still a lot of time.
So we'll see if it's a trick or a treat as we're on the eve of Halloween for these different candidates. Let's move to New Jersey now, because the Garden State, one of two states electing a governor next Tuesday. And this is a really tight, it's been a contentious race between Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican, Mikie Sherrill, the Democrat. And you've had this back and forth, threats of lawsuits from Ciattarelli to the Sherrill camp. There's another poll out with this race, and I want to show it to you and get your thoughts on it, because I want to drill down into some of the other information that we found on it. There's also somebody who conducted the poll who has sort of some thoughts as an analysis of it. Let's play that first, and then we'll get your thoughts on what exactly is going on in New Jersey.
What we've seen is the strongest card that Ciattarelli has is, as a business guy, he's considered probably more capable of handling the huge property tax issue that people have in New Jersey. She less so. But she's highly regarded on other issues as far as leadership. Perhaps that's her military background. And she's very, very, very strong with women. We did find there was more enthusiasm among Republicans for their candidate than there were Democrats for their candidate. That's something to keep your eye on. Who shows up on that day? What's the weather going to be like? What's the final closing arguments? Who's got the nastiest or best ads? So it really comes down to the last couple of days. It's a really very interesting horse race.
So, Ben, this recent poll shows what we've kind of seen is that Mikie Sherrill has been maintaining this lead, but some polls suggest that it's shrinking. The interesting thing to me, though, is the two figures in the respective parties that have kind of overshadowed in some cases when you talk about President Trump, and then other cases with Governor Murphy. Both, and it's interesting because the people that are supporting Ciattarelli obviously have to deal with the fact that President Trump has endorsed him, and they got to calculate that, whatever that means for them. Governor Murphy, the same for Sherrill. But it's interesting because both Murphy and Trump are underwater in support in New Jersey. Both are, I guess you could say, unlikable for the majority of people. And so how does that influence? We'll start with Ciattarelli. How has the President Trump influence, how significant has that been for the Ciattarelli campaign?
Yeah, I think it's no question that President Trump, in some ways, has hurt Ciattarelli with independents in this state. And it's worth remembering, this is somebody who's run for governor several times in this state. He last ran against Phil Murphy in 2021, and he was very critical of Donald Trump after the January 6th Capitol riot, and basically condemned him. And now, he's essentially doing the opposite of that. It's been a complete 180, and part of that is because you really can't win in a state where you need Republican voters to turn out unless you embrace the president in some form, because he's still very popular, immensely popular with Republican Party voters and voters across the country. So you're seeing him walk this very fine line, but there's no doubt that for voters outside the party who are not Republicans but who may be frustrated with the Phil Murphy administration, that might be a point of hesitation for them, and that could be holding him back. And I will say on the flip side, it's probably the same thing you're seeing with Sherrill. Remember, New Jersey has not had a single party hold the governor's mansion for 3 consecutive terms since the 1960s. So in many ways, she's trying to defy political gravity here. And I think you're seeing a little bit of that in these polls as well, because you see the news every day, you see the president's national approval ratings, and you'd expect her to maybe be in a position similar to what Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat in Virginia, is doing, where she has a comfortable lead in that governor's race. But here she's also running against Phil Murphy, local issues like the economy and taxes, which are definitely seen as issues where Ciattarelli may be stronger. So she has her own headwinds that she's dealing with. So there's information in this poll, I think, for both campaigns to jump on. But this is still an exceptionally close race.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned taxes. That was the #1 issue for the voters who were surveyed. And so if you're Ciattarelli, you got to feel comfortable with his message, trying to hammer home what his plan is for taxes. But then also, as we move forward into this race, let's not forget 4 years ago, Jack Ciattarelli came within 3 points, right, of Phil Murphy. And that was somewhat of a surprise for people who were watching this race across the country. How much of a litmus test or sort of a bellwether is the state of New Jersey as we move towards the midterms next year, when you look at this battle between Democrats and Republicans in a state like New Jersey?
Yeah, Mike, there's no question. This is the biggest bellwether on the ballot next Tuesday. And that's because the election was so close last year. Kamala Harris winning by about 5 or 6 points in a state that has been blue on the presidential level for a very long time. And part of that has to do with how President Trump improved his standing with working class voters of color in states like New York, states like New Jersey, states like California. So if you're working at the Republican National Committee or the White House next Tuesday, I think the most important information you can get out of the elections next week is how the Trump coalition performs. Does the voting coalition for Ciattarelli, for Winsome Earl Sears in Virginia, how does that resemble the coalition that brought President Trump to the White House? Or is it the same group of people? If not, that could signal that maybe there's a concern about enthusiasm heading into the midterms. But New Jersey certainly has many more tea leaves and clues to offer for both parties looking to 2026 than any other state on the ballot next week, for sure.
It's a fascinating race, fascinating state, and we'll see how it plays out in the coming days. Ben Siegel, always great to see you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We continue to cover the main issues in the race for New York mayor, and this evening the focus shifts to Washington. President Trump has taken a keen interest in this election in his hometown. Who is going to lead his hometown? He blasted the frontrunner Zohran Mamdani, calling him a communist, and reportedly even tried to work behind the scenes to somehow prevent him from winning. He also threatened to withhold federal funds if Mamdani were to win. Eyewitness News anchor Bill Britter takes a look at how these 3 mayoral hopefuls plan to deal with the Trump administration.
Donald Trump, a native of Queens, has, to put it mildly, loomed large over the election of the next mayor. He has cut funding for key projects, and he's let it be known when he doesn't like who's in the running for the office. He has spent the most time attacking Zohran Mamdani, falsely claiming that the 34-year-old frontrunner is a communist. During an appearance on Fox News, Mamdani turned to the camera and spoke directly to the president.
Which is that I will not be a mayor like Mayor Adams, who will call you to figure out how to stay out of jail. I won't be a disgraced governor like Andrew Cuomo, who will call you to ask how to win this election. I can do those things on my own. I will, however, be a mayor who is ready to speak at any time to lower the cost of living. That's the way that I'm going to lead this city. That's the partnership I want to build.
Andrew Cuomo has also attacked Mr. Mamdani, saying the president will take advantage of him. In an interview, he told me from his time as governor, he had daily battles with the president.
I'm a fighter, and he's a fighter, so we had a lot of battles. And he was sending National Guard all over the country at that time, threatened to send them to New York. I said, no how, no way. He didn't. So we won our share of battles.
While Mr. Trump has dismissed Curtis Sliwa as, quoting now, not exactly prime time, the candidate admits he'll need to work with his fellow Republican if he became mayor.
The Trump administration has said they're going to cut NYCHA funds, they cut Medicaid funds, they cut food stamps, they intend on cutting more. You got to get ahead of the curve. Meet with them and say, whoa, 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 whoa. Can we sit down? Can we have a conversation and agree to negotiate this before you just drop the hammer on our head?
The funding is only one part of dealing with the Trump administration. The president has already deployed the National Guard in many cities like Chicago and Los Angeles. For the record, all three mayoral candidates in New York oppose Mr. Trump ordering National Guard troops to patrol the streets of the country's biggest city. Now, when it comes to immigration and the president's continued crackdown and deportation of undocumented workers who have been here for years and are crucial to the economy, Mr. Mamdani and Mr. Cuomo say they would keep New York's sanctuary city protections, while Mr. Sliwa says he would end those policies. And finally, all three of the candidates insist they are each best suited to stand up to Donald Trump and his administration.
I am the last person on this stage that Mr. Trump wants to see as mayor.
I am Donald Trump's worst nightmare as a progressive Muslim immigrant who actually fights for the things that I believe in.
Oh, if you believe Andrew Cuomo, who's calling up Trump all the time, I'm going to stand up to him. Zohran Mamdani, I'm going to stand up to him. You stand up to President Trump, who controls all the money. Guess what? We, the citizens, lose.
Tomorrow, we're going to take a look at how the candidates plan on tackling transportation in New York City, an important issue that will impact all of us. And our thanks to Bill for that report tonight. I'm Mike Marza. If you're just now starting to pay attention to all of this, trust me, you're not alone. And we got you. Full coverage on all the big races ahead of Election Day to get you prepped and ready to vote. ABC 7 NY.